Are the fake dust particles a pseudo-volumetric effect or just a seasoning of some kind? Anyway, in the first chapter of this course, we made a good use of the dust 2D planes, so why not reuse it here? I see no reason not to do it. As a quick reminder, that's just a transparent plane with a dust texture, sitting and waiting for you in the downloadable resources. I'll just transfer it to our scene and put it into the dust collection. I can feel that my viewport is becoming pretty slow with all the layers we have added. It is a lot of transparency and overlapping transparency, which is even worse. It is getting a bit hard to tell what's going on. I hope you're able to see the dust particles though. I think the video compression shouldn't kill it completely. Alright, now switching over to the material editor with Shift F3 so we can change the emission color for this material, as if it reflects more of our sunshine, warmer color, something like that. It's like the elements belonging to the same group or source should probably match in terms of their color. The higher intensity bits like these dust modes should also be slightly desaturated as well, I think. At least it's a good practice to be cautious of bright and saturated things at the same time, to make it easier for color management to handle. I think I want to reduce the amount of dust too, so I'm crunching the blacks in the color ramp. That should do the trick. Well, maybe not as much crunch. And not as much emissive strength at the same time. It's a little bit hard to tell in the viewport though, to be honest. It'll be way clearer when we render it out. To help fake 3D depth, I usually make a few copies of that dust plane. Then some particles naturally fall out of focus, while other are imperfect sharpness, and it's a nice depth cue for us, the viewers. Randomizing the first copy a bit by rotating it the other way, like this. Honestly, I can hardly tell the difference yet, but I believe it is there. My intuition tells me it always works. So that's our second dust plane. Gonna create the third copy though, this time for the foreground. So I'm gonna press Shift D now. That will surely get us some bokeh circles. Yeah, can you see that? Probably not, looking at the noisiness in the viewport. See, moving circle. It almost looks like a dirt on the lens or something. That should be a lovely effect once we're able to see it. You know what, let me render it out for you, and we will have a proper look then. Let me first rename this one, Dust Plane 03. Time to sip a coffee and render it out. So that is our dust effect. That is the layer in sharpness. How about the second layer though? Okay, I wonder if you can see it. There is something there, but yeah, minor stuff indeed. The foreground bokeh circles extended vertically due to anamorphic lens squeeze though. That was worth the hassle. As for that anamorphic squeeze, let me plug in the example from the first chapter once more. What the higher aperture ratio in the camera settings does is simulates the anamorphic squeeze of the out of focus elements, while the number of blades affects the look of the bokeh circle, turning it into a bokeh octagon, pentagon, or whatever. It is usually accompanied by a wide screen aspect ratio to imitate the authentic anamorphic look that was always wide due to technical reasons. As a flash forward, the widescreen aspect ratio is something that we will think about in the post-processing videos. The anamorphic lens flare, on the other hand, can be added now. As a finishing touch, we can soften a digital look by adding an anamorphic lens flare. Some artists actually like optical aberrations, others not as much. In this scene, it makes sense, I think, as we have an implied light source, so why not? First, I will switch off the volume layers temporarily to make our viewport faster. Then I'll create a new layer, lens flares. I think let's reuse this flare from the project files, just as we did in chapter 1, a fairly typical anamorphic streak. This type of streaks is what you get in the anamorphic lenses instead of more circular type of aberrations. Okay, as we remember, while the 2D plane with the flare can technically be placed anywhere, it looks the most believable when it is actually near the camera sensor, just in front of it, in our lens barrel, let's say. It would also naturally place the lens flare out of focus due to where our focal point is. So I'm gonna select the plane, shift click on the camera, then Ctrl C and copy its location and rotation. Then I will scale it down a touch. We can withdraw it by pressing G and Z twice to move it on the local Z axis. Watch how it folds in and out of focus depending on the distance from the camera sensor. Okay, as we have an implied light source to the right, just outside the frame boundary, the one that actually motivates our backlight as well, I would like to have the streak originate there too. Gonna rotate it a bit like that. Okay, and let's give it a different tint, a cooler one. We'll need a mix RGB operation for that. Let's go with color as our blending mode. And actually we can mix it with the neutral gray as well, and that will basically desaturate it. But I'll go with the pale blue color. Speaking of blue, anamorphic flares are often blue or purple, sometimes more neutral though. We can make it any color we want really. Personally, I'm cautious of highly saturated mixtures for special effects and for everything else for that matter. So I'm using a neutral, slightly off to the blue side mixture, and the intensity which is rather subtle. Alright, I'm duplicating the 2D plane with the flare once more to add an extra streak, which is gonna be slightly smaller and harsher. To make it sharper and more defined, I'm moving it away from the camera slightly. So it's this type of sharper streak. I think that looks good, a bit of extra haziness hinting at something bright right outside the shot. Before anyone runs into the transparency issues, here in the light bounce there are so-called transparent bounces, which are limited to 6 currently. But as we have tons of semi-transparent layers already, 6 could be not enough. Let us see. Dust check, steam check, so far so good, but let's see what could go wrong if there was just 5 transparent bounces. Or let's say 4. Yeah, see that? Now there is not enough transparent bounces to render all these layers of fake volumetric effects and the flares, and now that's a problem. Too much simply is going on. To play it safe, I'll give it something like 8 bounces, and it should cover it. It should be enough, I think. Oh well, as an afterthought, the flare could still have a bit more of this denim blue coming through. A little color never hurt nobody. Okay, so I'm going back through our list of layers and just toggling everything on. Depending on the lighting direction you've chosen, these optical effects can be non-existent or used in small doses or in J.J. Abrams' Star Trek doses if the narrative and aesthetics call for that. I will stick to fairly cosmetic, hey, we have some brightness there type of lens flare, I think. I think it also works really well here.